The digital clock on Emma Rodriguez's nightstand glowed 11:47 p.m. when the first sound shattered the peaceful silence of their Phoenix home. The 3-year-old stirred in her toddler bed, decorated with dancing princesses and rainbow unicorns, as something crashed downstairs. Her father had tucked her in just 2 hours earlier, reading her favorite bedtime story about a brave little rabbit who conquered her fears. Now, those same fears came rushing back as unfamiliar voices echoed through the house. Emma's small fingers clutched her stuffed elephant, Mr. Peanuts, as she slipped from her bed and padded barefoot across the carpeted floor. Her bedroom door stood slightly ajar, exactly how her father always left it, so he could hear if she called for him during the night. Through the narrow gap, she could see the soft glow from the living room lamp below, the one that always stayed on to chase away the monsters her imagination conjured in the darkness. "Where is it?" a harsh voice demanded, unlike any voice Emma had ever heard in her safe, loving home. The tone sent ice water through her tiny veins. This wasn't her father's gentle baritone or her grandmother's soothing Spanish lullabies. This voice carried violence, desperation, and something that made Emma's 3-year-old instincts scream danger. Her father's response came from somewhere near the kitchen, his voice shaking with controlled terror. "Please, I don't know what you're talking about. My daughter's upstairs sleeping. Just take whatever you want and leave us alone." Carlos Rodriguez, a hard-working mechanic who fixed cars at Martinez Auto Shop 6 days a week, had never owned anything valuable enough to steal. His most prized possessions were family photos and Emma's artwork that covered their refrigerator like colorful prayers. Emma crept closer to the stairs, her heart hammering against her ribs like a caged bird. The hardwood steps that usually announced her morning trips to find Daddy making pancakes now seemed like a dangerous precipice. She could see shadows moving in the living room, her father's familiar silhouette backed against the wall, and another figure, larger and threatening, dressed in dark clothes with something covering his face. "Don't lie to me," the intruder snarled, and Emma heard something metallic scrape against the wall. "Rodriguez told me you had the package. 5 kilos of product, worth more than this dump will ever be." Emma didn't understand the words, but she understood fear in her father's voice when he replied, "Rodriguez? Which Rodriguez? I don't know any Rodriguez except my own family. You've got the wrong house, man. Please, just check my wallet. Take my truck keys, take anything, but leave my little girl alone." The mention of her name made Emma press herself against the cool wall, trying to become invisible. Through the stair railings, she watched the masked figure pace like a caged animal. The man's movements were jerky, aggressive, and Emma's young mind recognized the body language of danger, even without understanding the context. Her father had taught her about strangers, about bad touches, about running to find Grandma Maria if anyone ever made her feel scared. But Grandma lived 3 blocks away, and Emma couldn't reach the phone without going past the terrifying stranger. Outside, Bruno's deep bark echoed from the backyard. Emma's face lit up momentarily. Bruno would protect them. A massive German shepherd had been her father's loyal companion for 5 years. A rescue dog who transformed from a frightened shelter animal into the family's devoted guardian. Bruno slept outside to watch over their home, but he always came running when Emma called his name. The barking grew more frantic, and Emma heard Bruno's heavy paws scratching at the back door. Her father must have locked him out during his evening routine, never imagining that tonight they'd need their 4-legged protector more than ever. The scratching intensified, accompanied by whining that sounded almost human in its desperation to reach his family. "Shut that dog up, or I'll shut him up permanently," the intruder growled, producing a knife that gleamed wickedly in the lamplight. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she recognized the same kitchen knife her father used to cut her sandwiches into fun shapes. How had the bad man gotten Daddy's knife? Carlos Rodriguez, despite his terror, tried one more time to reason with his attacker. Look, you're obviously looking for someone else. I work at an auto shop. I come home to my daughter. I watch cartoons and eat cereal for dinner. I don't know anything about any package or any other Rodriguez. You can search the whole house if you want. You won't find anything because there's nothing to find. But reason had no place in Marcus Thompson's drug-addled mind. The career criminal had been promised a massive score, told that Carlos Rodriguez was holding a fortune in stolen narcotics. The fact that he'd broken into the wrong Rodriguez home, a case of mistaken identity that would destroy multiple lives, never occurred to him. All Thompson could see were his mounting debts to dangerous people and his growing desperation for the score that would solve all his problems. Bruno's barking reached a crescendo as the German shepherd somehow forced his way through the back door, his protective instincts overriding everything else. The magnificent dog burst into the living room like a furry missile, placing himself between Thompson and Carlos. His teeth bared in a snarl that promised swift justice for anyone who threatened his family. Good boy, Bruno, Carlos whispered, hope flickering in his voice. Get him, boy. What happened next would haunt Emma Rodriguez for months to come. Thompson, cornered and panicked, lashed out with the knife. Bruno yelped, a sound of pain and betrayal that cut through Emma's soul. Her beloved protector, the gentle giant who let her ride on his back and shared her afternoon snacks, crumpled to the floor. The sight of Bruno's blood staining their family carpet shattered something fundamental in Emma's young psyche. No, Carlos screamed, lunging forward to help his fallen companion. Thompson turned the blade on him next, striking with the same senseless violence that had already claimed Bruno's life. Emma watched through the railings as her father, her hero, her whole world collapsed beside their faithful dog. The house fell eerily silent except for Emma's rapid breathing and the ticking of the grandfather clock her father had inherited from his own father. Thompson stood over the bodies for a moment, his chest heaving with adrenaline and panic. He grabbed Carlos's wallet and watch, stuffing them into his jacket pocket, as if robbery had been his intention all along. Then he noticed Bruno still breathing, barely alive but suffering. With cold calculation, Thompson dragged the injured dog toward the back door. Emma watched in horror as the man who had destroyed her family disappeared into the night, taking Bruno with him. She remained frozen behind the bedroom door for 3 hours until her grandmother arrived for their planned morning visit and found the devastating scene. From that moment forward, Emma Rodriguez never spoke another word, carrying the terrible secret of what really happened to Bruno, a secret that would nearly let her father's killer escape justice forever, until one golden retriever named Rex helped her find her voice again in the most unlikely place imaginable. Detective Sarah Martinez's coffee had gone cold hours ago, but she couldn't tear herself away from the evidence board that dominated her cramped office wall. Red string connected photographs, witness statements, and forensic reports in a desperate web of clues that led nowhere. 8 months had crawled by since Carlos Rodriguez's murder, and the case was slowly dying from lack of evidence. Emma's school photo smiled down at her from the center of it all, a bright-eyed little girl with pigtails, who held the key to everything, but couldn't speak the words that would unlock justice. The physical evidence told only part of the story. Carlos had died from 3 stab wounds to the chest, defensive wounds on his hands, proving he'd fought desperately for his life. Blood spatter patterns indicated a struggle that moved from the living room to the kitchen and back. Thompson's fingerprints were nowhere to be found. The killer had worn gloves, but Carlos's stolen Timex watch, discovered in Thompson's girlfriend's apartment 3 weeks later, had seemed like the smoking gun they needed. Seemed being the operative phrase. Defense attorney Margaret Walsh had systematically destroyed their circumstantial case during pre-trial motions. Thompson claimed he'd bought the watch from a pawn shop for $50, and the shop's security cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned that week. The girlfriend, Melissa Chun, swore under oath that Marcus had owned that watch for months. Without additional evidence, the watch alone wouldn't convince a jury beyond reasonable doubt. Dr. Amanda Chun's therapy sessions with Emma had become Martinez's last hope, but progress remained maddeningly slow. The renowned child psychologist had tried every technique in her arsenal: play therapy, art therapy, music therapy, even equine therapy at a ranch outside Phoenix. Emma participated in activities, drew pictures, and interacted normally with her grandmother, but words simply wouldn't come. She communicated through nods, pointing, and occasionally writing single letters on paper, but never spoke aloud. "She's protecting herself," Dr. Chun explained during their weekly consultation in her sun-filled office. Emma's mind has built a wall around that night. Speaking about trauma means reliving it, and her psyche has decided that silence equals safety. Forcing her to testify could shatter her completely. The doctor's fingers drummed nervously on her notepad. "I've worked with selective mutism before, but never in a case this severe. The child witnessed ultimate betrayal. Someone invaded her safe space and destroyed everything she trusted." District Attorney Robert Hayes felt the political pressure mounting like storm clouds over the Arizona state capitol. The Rodriguez murder had captured local media attention, particularly after Channel 12 News ran a heartbreaking segment about the little girl who lost her voice. Hispanic community leaders demanded justice for Carlos, a beloved mechanic who'd fixed cars for struggling families at cost. Hayes faced re-election in 18 months, and losing this high-profile case to a technicality would be political suicide. "We need that child's testimony," Hayes insisted during heated meetings with his prosecution team. "Thompson's got priors armed robbery, assault, drug possession. He's exactly the kind of predator who'd target a single father for a home invasion." But without Emma identifying him, we're prosecuting a theft case, not murder. Prosecutor Jennifer Liu, a mother of 2 young daughters herself, fought back tears whenever she reviewed Emma's case file. "She's been through enough, Robert. Dr. Chun says forcing her to testify could cause permanent psychological damage. We can't destroy this child's future just to close our case." Liu had spent countless hours studying Emma's drawings from therapy sessions, hoping to find clues hidden in the colorful scribbles. Stick figures that might represent people, dark scrawls that could indicate violence, but nothing concrete enough for courtroom evidence. The defense team, meanwhile, sensed victory approaching. Margaret Walsh, a veteran criminal attorney known for her aggressive tactics, had built her strategy around Emma's silence. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she practiced in her downtown Phoenix office, "the state wants you to convict my client based on circumstantial evidence and the testimony of a traumatized child who hasn't spoken in 8 months. Is that the standard of proof we accept in America?" Walsh knew that juries sympathized with traumatized children, but they also demanded concrete evidence. Silence couldn't convict anyone. Behind the legal maneuvering, Emma's daily life had found a new, quieter rhythm. Grandmother Maria had moved into the house where the tragedy occurred. Unable to afford 2 residences, but unwilling to uproot Emma from her familiar surroundings. The living room carpet had been replaced, the walls repainted, but ghosts lingered in every corner. Emma no longer played in the backyard, where Bruno used to chase tennis balls and dig holes near the fence. She avoided the kitchen, where her father had made her favorite scrambled eggs every Saturday morning. School had become Emma's refuge. At Little Hands Preschool, she participated in activities without the weight of adult expectations pressing down on her shoulders. Teachers reported that she played normally with other children, though she never spoke aloud. She communicated. Through elaborate games of charades, artistic expression, and a sophisticated system of gestures that her classmates had learned to interpret, other 3-year-olds accepted her silence without judgment, creating an environment where Emma could simply exist without the pressure to perform or remember. Dr. Chun documented every session meticulously, searching for patterns that might unlock Emma's voice. The child showed no signs of intellectual disability. She understood complex instructions, solved age-appropriate puzzles, and demonstrated emotional intelligence beyond her years. Her silence appeared entirely trauma-related, a psychological prison built from that horrible night when her world exploded into violence and loss. She dreams about dogs, Grandmother Maria confided during one session. She wakes up reaching for something, calling out sounds that aren't quite words. Last week, she drew a picture of 2 dogs, one brown and black like Bruno, and one yellow. I asked her about the yellow dog, but she just shrugged and colored some more. Dr. Chun filed this information carefully, wondering if Emma's subconscious mind was trying to process her trauma through canine imagery. The Rodriguez case had also affected the Phoenix Police Department in unexpected ways. Officer Jake Sullivan, handler of therapy dog Rex, had followed the investigation with growing interest. Sullivan had seen trauma destroy children's voices before, watched young victims retreat into protective silence that sometimes lasted years. His golden retriever Rex had helped dozens of abuse victims find courage to speak, but never in circumstances this dire or public. There's something different about this case, Sullivan told his partner during their evening patrol. That little girl saw something that night, something beyond just the murder. Her silence isn't just about trauma. It's about protection. She's keeping a secret that even she doesn't fully understand yet. Rex, riding in the back seat of their patrol car, seemed to sense his handler's preoccupation with the case occasionally, whining softly as if he too felt compelled to help. Detective Martinez had reached the point of desperation that drove good cops to consider unconventional solutions. She'd interviewed every neighbor within 6 blocks, reviewed every security camera in the area, and followed up on every tip that flooded in after the news coverage. The breakthrough moments that solved other cases, a witness coming forward, forensic evidence emerging, confessions breaking under pressure, simply weren't materializing. Maybe we're missing something obvious, Martinez muttered to herself, studying crime scene photos for the 1,000th time. Blood patterns, broken furniture, signs of struggle, everything pointed to a violent confrontation, but something felt incomplete. The scene looked almost too clean for such a brutal crime, as if evidence had been deliberately removed or obscured. As September's desert heat gave way to October's cooler evenings, the trial date loomed like an approaching storm. Thompson sat in Maricopa County Jail, confident that his silence would prove more powerful than a traumatized child's missing voice. His court-appointed attorney had assured him that cases built on circumstantial evidence rarely resulted in convictions, especially when the key witness couldn't testify. Emma Rodriguez continued her silent existence, unaware that her words, when they finally came, would not only solve her father's murder, but revolutionize how America's justice system approaches traumatized child witnesses. The little girl who had lost everything in one terrible night was about to discover that sometimes the smallest voices carry the power to change the world. But first, she would need to find that voice again, and it would take a very special golden retriever to help her remember that not all strangers meant harm, and that some protectors came with 4 legs and hearts, full of unconditional love. The clock was ticking toward a courtroom confrontation that would stun a nation. But for now, Emma Rodriguez remained locked in protective silence, holding secrets that could free a killer or deliver the justice her father deserved. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Phoenix Police Department's K-9 training facility as Officer Jake Sullivan watched Rex demonstrate the heel command with mathematical precision. The 5-year-old golden retriever moved like liquid gold, his muscular frame responding to Sullivan's subtlest gestures with an intelligence that bordered on telepathic. Rex wasn't just another police dog, he was something extraordinary. A therapy animal whose gentle soul had been specially trained to help trauma victims find courage in their darkest moments. Sullivan had discovered Rex's unique gift 3 years earlier during a domestic violence case involving twin 7-year-old girls who'd witnessed their mother's brutal assault. Traditional therapy had failed completely. The children flinched at every sound, trusted no adult, and communicated only through terrified whispers to each other. When Sullivan brought Rex to the Children's Advocacy Center on a routine visit, something magical happened. The golden retriever approached the girls with infinite patience, lying down and making himself small and non-threatening. Within minutes, they were petting his soft fur and giggling for the first time in months. By the end of the session, they were speaking openly about what they'd seen, their small hands buried in Rex's golden coat as they found strength in his unwavering presence. Word of Rex's abilities had spread through Arizona's law enforcement community like wildfire. The Phoenix Police Department officially designated him as their first victim assistance dog, and Sullivan found himself traveling across the state to help traumatized witnesses prepare for testimony. Rex had helped a teenage girl testify against her abusive stepfather, comforted elderly fraud victims during depositions, and even calmed aggressive suspects during interrogations. His success rate was unprecedented. Nearly 90% of victims who worked with Rex found the courage to speak their truth in court. But Emma Rodriguez's case was different. Sullivan had followed the investigation through department briefings, his heart aching for the silent little girl whose world had been shattered by senseless violence. He'd seen the crime scene photos, read Dr. Chun's psychological evaluations, and understood the stakes. This wasn't just about one traumatized child. Marcus Thompson was a dangerous predator who would kill again if Emma's silence set him free. "She needs Rex," Sullivan told his captain during their weekly K-9 unit meeting. Captain Rodriguez, no relation to the victim, raised skeptical eyebrows at the suggestion. "Jake, we're talking about a murder trial here, not a therapy session. The media attention alone would be insane. And what if it backfires? What if the dog scares her more?" Sullivan leaned forward, his conviction absolute. "Rex doesn't scare anyone, Captain. That's what makes him special. He reads people's emotions better than most humans do. If Emma saw her dog get hurt that night, seeing Rex might help her understand that not all animals and not all strangers mean harm." He pulled up Rex's success statistics on his tablet, scrolling through case after case of breakthrough moments. "Look at these results. This dog has given voices back to victims when nothing else worked." The conversation that would change everything began with a desperate phone call. Detective Martinez, running out of options as Thompson's trial approached, had heard whispers about the miracle dog who helped traumatized witnesses. She tracked down Sullivan at the training facility, her voice tight with urgency. "Officer Sullivan? This is Detective Martinez from Homicide. I need to know about your therapy dog and whether he might help a very special case." Sullivan listened as Martinez explained Emma's situation, the selective mutism, the failed therapy attempts, the looming trial date just 6 weeks away. "She's our only witness," Martinez concluded. "Without her testimony, Thompson walks free, and this monster will hurt other families. I've read about Rex's work with other victims. Could he help Emma find her voice?" The request sent Sullivan into deep contemplation. Rex had never worked with a child this young, never been involved in a case this high profile, and certainly never entered a courtroom during actual proceedings. Therapy dogs typically worked behind the scenes, helping victims prepare for testimony in safe, controlled environments. What Martinez was suggesting, bringing Rex into the actual trial, was completely unprecedented. "Let me talk to Emma's psychologist first," Sullivan replied. "Rex is extraordinary, but we need to make sure this won't traumatize her further. And I'll need to speak with the district attorney about courtroom protocols. This has never been done before in Arizona." Dr. Chun's initial reaction was cautious optimism mixed with professional concern. During their phone consultation, she explained Emma's current psychological state. She's made progress in some areas, drawing more complex pictures, playing more interactively with other children, but she still hasn't spoken a single word. She shows signs of severe anxiety whenever adults mention that night or ask her to remember details. However, she does respond positively to animal imagery in her artwork. She draws dogs frequently, always in protective poses. The psychologist paused, considering the implications. "There's something Emma isn't telling us, something beyond witnessing the murder itself. Her behavior suggests she's carrying a specific secret, not just general trauma. Maybe seeing a living, breathing therapy dog could help her feel safe enough to share whatever she's been holding inside." Sullivan arranged a preliminary meeting at Dr. Chun's office, careful to avoid any mention of testimony or courts. Emma arrived with her grandmother Maria, who clutched the child's hand protectively. The 3-year-old had grown thinner over the months, her once bright eyes now cautious and guarded. She wore a yellow sundress decorated with butterflies, a stark contrast to the heavy sadness that seemed to follow her like a shadow. Rex lay in the center of Dr. Chun's play area, his golden fur catching afternoon sunlight streaming through tall windows. Sullivan had positioned him carefully, close enough to be noticed, but far enough away to avoid overwhelming Emma. The golden retriever's training kicked in immediately. He remained perfectly still, allowing Emma to observe him without pressure to interact. For 20 minutes, Emma played with toys while stealing glances at Rex. Her grandmother and Dr. Chun made casual conversation, pretending not to notice Emma's growing fascination with the motionless dog. Finally, Emma abandoned her coloring book and crept closer, her bare feet silent on the soft carpet. Rex's tail thumped once against the floor, a gentle greeting that made Emma freeze momentarily before taking another step forward. The breakthrough came when Emma dropped her stuffed elephant, Mr. Peanuts, directly in front of Rex. The golden retriever carefully picked up the toy in his soft mouth and placed it back in Emma's outstretched hands. Emma's face transformed with wonder, the first genuine smile anyone had seen since that terrible night. She sat cross-legged beside Rex, burying her small fingers in his thick fur, and for the first time in months, her rigid posture relaxed completely. Dr. Chun documented everything, recognizing the significance of Emma's response. "She's not afraid of him," the psychologist whispered to Sullivan. "Look at her body language. She feels safe. Rex is triggering positive associations, maybe memories of her own dog." Sullivan nodded, watching Emma trace patterns in Rex's fur with the concentrated focus of an artist. The connection was undeniable and immediate. District Attorney Hayes initially resisted the unprecedented request to bring a therapy dog into his courtroom. "It's never been done, Jennifer," he told Prosecutor Liu during an emergency meeting. "The defense will claim it's prejudicial, designed to manipulate the jury's emotions. Judge Williams might not even allow it." But as Liu presented Dr. Chun's preliminary report and Officer Sullivan's success statistics, Hayes realized they'd discovered their only remaining option. "The child responds to the dog in ways she doesn't respond to humans," Liu argued passionately. "Rex represents safety and protection qualities Emma associates with her murdered dog Bruno. If seeing Rex helps her feel secure enough to speak, we have to try. Thompson's trial starts in 3 weeks. This is our last chance." The legal precedent research took 2 weeks of intensive work. Liu's team discovered that therapy dogs had been used in courtrooms across 12 other states, primarily for child witnesses in abuse cases. Federal courts had generally approved their presence when properly trained animals could help vulnerable witnesses testify effectively. The key was proving that Rex's presence served a legitimate therapeutic purpose, rather than simply swaying jury emotions. Judge Patricia Williams agreed to a private chambers meeting to observe Emma's interaction with Rex before making her final ruling. The demonstration lasted 30 minutes, during which Emma sat comfortably beside the golden retriever, occasionally patting his head or leaning against his warm side. Though she still didn't speak, her demeanor was dramatically different, calmer, more present, more like the happy child she'd been before tragedy struck. The dog clearly provides genuine comfort, Judge Williams concluded. But I want strict protocols. Rex stays beside the witness stand. No tricks or performances, and if the child becomes distressed, we stop immediately. She looked directly at Sullivan. Officer, you understand that this sets a precedent that could affect courtrooms across the country. Sullivan nodded solemnly, understanding the weight of responsibility. Rex would become the first therapy dog in Arizona history to assist a witness during actual trial proceedings. As he drove home that evening, Sullivan spoke to Rex in the rearview mirror. Ready to make history, boy? That little girl is counting on us to help her find her voice. And somewhere out there, her father and her dog are counting on us too. Rex's golden eyes met his handler's gaze in the mirror, as if the remarkable animal understood that their greatest challenge lay ahead. In just days, they would enter a courtroom where justice hung in the balance, carried by the words of a traumatized child who had been silent for 8 months. The miracle everyone was hoping for depended on one simple truth, that love, in the form of a gentle golden retriever, could overcome even the deepest trauma and give voice to the voiceless. The Maricopa County Superior Courthouse had never seen anything like it. By 7 a.m., news vans lined Jefferson Street like mechanical vultures, their satellite dishes reaching toward the desert sky as reporters prepared for what Channel 12 News was calling the trial that could change everything. Inside the imposing concrete building, Court Clerk Sandra Williams checked her preparations for the 3rd time, knowing that legal history would be made before lunch. Emma Rodriguez sat in the victim advocate's office, her small legs swinging from an oversized chair as she colored in a princess coloring book. She wore her favorite dress, navy blue, with tiny white flowers that her father had bought for her 3rd birthday just 2 months before his death. Her dark hair was pulled back in the pigtails that Grandmother Maria had carefully braided that morning, each secured with butterfly clips that caught the fluorescent light. Emma appeared calm to casual observers, but Dr. Chun noticed the telltale signs of anxiety: rapid breathing, fidgeting hands, and the way she pressed her stuffed elephant, Mr. Peanuts, against her chest like a shield. She had nightmares again last night, Maria Rodriguez whispered to Dr. Chun, her weathered hands twisting the rosary beads she'd carried every day since her son's murder. She kept reaching out in her sleep, calling for Bruno and Papa. This morning she asked me with her eyes if today was the day she had to help Papa. I don't know how she understands, but she knows this is important. 3 floors above, District Attorney Robert Hayes paced his temporary office like a caged panther. The media attention had exceeded his worst fear. CNN was broadcasting live updates, and his phone hadn't stopped ringing with calls from legal experts, child advocacy groups, and politicians. "This better work, Jennifer," he told Prosecutor Lou, who was reviewing her opening statement for the 5th time. "If this therapy dog experiment backfires, we'll be the laughingstock of American jurisprudence." Liu's stomach churned with nervous energy. She'd prosecuted hundreds of cases, sent dozens of killers to prison, but never had so much riding on the words of a 3-year-old child. "Emma's our only hope," she replied, organizing her notes with shaking hands. Rex gave her comfort during our practice sessions, but testifying in front of a packed courtroom is completely different. We're asking her to relive the worst night of her life while strangers stare at her. Defense attorney Margaret Walsh had spent the morning filing last-minute motions to exclude Rex from the proceedings. Her client, Marcus Thompson, sat in the defendant's holding cell, his confidence slightly shaken by the media circus surrounding his trial. Walsh had assured him that a traumatized child's testimony, especially one aided by what she called prejudicial prop, would never convince a reasonable jury. But the unprecedented nature of the proceedings had introduced variables that made even her experienced legal mind uncertain. This therapy dog is nothing but courtroom theater, Walsh argued to Judge Patricia Williams during a heated pre-trial conference. My client deserves a fair trial based on evidence, not emotional manipulation designed to tug at the jury's heartstrings. A silent child and a golden retriever might make for compelling television, but they don't constitute proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Judge Williams, a 20-year veteran of criminal proceedings, understood the historic nature of her decision. Legal scholars from across the country would scrutinize every ruling she made today. Ms. Walsh, your objections are noted for the record, but I've reviewed the psychological evaluations. This child requires accommodation to participate in these proceedings. Rex is a trained assistance animal, not a prop. However, I'm establishing strict guidelines, no tricks, no performances, and if the child shows any signs of distress, we stop immediately. Officer Sullivan arrived at the courthouse with Rex at precisely 8:30 a.m., avoiding the media frenzy by using the building's secure entrance. Rex wore his official assistant's vest royal blue with victim assistance dog embroidered in gold letters and carried himself with the dignified bearing of an animal who understood the importance of his work. Sullivan had spent extra time grooming Rex that morning, ensuring the golden retriever looked professional and calm for the cameras that would document every moment. Ready for this, partner? Sullivan asked, scratching behind Rex's ears as they waited in the witness preparation room. Rex's tail wagged once his signal that he was focused and ready to work. The dog had been trained specifically for high-stress environments, able to remain calm despite loud noises, crowded rooms, and emotional outbursts. But even Sullivan felt nervous about the unprecedented nature of today's proceedings. The courtroom itself had been reconfigured to accommodate Rex's presence. A special cushioned area was positioned beside the witness stand where the golden retriever could lie comfortably while remaining visible to Emma. Court security had been briefed on Rex's role, understanding that he was a working animal who shouldn't be petted or distracted by well-meaning observers. The jury box held 12 citizens who'd been carefully screened for their attitudes toward both children and animals people, who could focus on testimony rather than being swayed by Rex's undeniable charm. Emma's first glimpse of the courtroom came at 9:15 a.m. when Dr. Chun led her through the heavy oak doors. The child's eyes immediately went wide, taking in the imposing space with its high ceilings, formal furnishings, and dozens of adult faces turned toward her. Emma instinctively stepped backward, seeking the safety of her grandmother's legs, but then her gaze found Rex lying peacefully beside the witness stand. The transformation was immediate and visible to everyone present. Emma's rigid posture softened. Her rapid breathing slowed, and for the first time since entering the building, she took a voluntary step forward. Rex remained perfectly still, his golden eyes meeting Emma's gaze with infinite patience and understanding. The courtroom fell silent as observers witnessed the subtle magic happening between traumatized child and therapy dog. She remembers him, Dr. Chun whispered to Prosecutor Liu. Look at her body language. She feels safe. Emma approached the witness stand with small, hesitant steps, never taking her eyes off Rex. The golden retriever's presence seemed to create an invisible bubble of protection around the little girl, insulating her from the intimidating formal atmosphere that surrounded them. Marcus Thompson, seeing Emma for the first time, felt an unexpected chill run down his spine. The child looked exactly like she had that terrible night 8 months ago. The same dark hair, the same big eyes that had watched from the stairs as he destroyed her family. But this Emma seemed different somehow, more present and aware. Thompson whispered urgently to his attorney, "She was just a baby when it happened. She can't possibly remember anything useful." Walsh nodded reassuringly, but privately worried about the optics. Emma's interaction with Rex was creating exactly the kind of sympathetic tableau that could sway jurors' emotions. The child's obvious comfort with the therapy dog suggested healing and resilience, qualities that made her seem more credible as a witness. "Remember," Walsh whispered back, "she hasn't spoken in 8 months. Silent children can't convict anyone." Jury selection had taken 2 days, with both sides carefully vetting potential jurors for biases regarding children, animals, and violent crime. The final panel included 3 parents, 2 dog owners, a retired teacher, and 5 citizens who'd convinced both attorneys they could weigh evidence objectively. Foreman Patricia Davis, a postal worker and mother of 4, later admitted that seeing Emma's interaction with Rex had immediately made her want to protect the child from further trauma. As Judge Williams called the court to order, Emma settled into the specially modified witness chair with Rex lying directly beside her. The golden retriever's breathing was slow and steady, his presence radiating the calm confidence that had helped dozens of victims find their voices. Emma's small hand reached down to touch Rex's soft fur, and for the first time in months, she looked directly at the adults around her instead of staring at the floor. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Prosecutor Liu began, her voice carrying across the hushed courtroom, "today you'll hear testimony from the bravest witness I've ever had the honor to represent. 3-year-old Emma Rodriguez will tell you about the night someone invaded her home, murdered her father, and destroyed her family. She'll you about violence, loss, and unimaginable trauma, but she'll also tell you about truth." The words hung in the air like a promise and a prayer. Emma's fingers continued stroking Rex's fur as the golden retriever provided silent strength for the testimony that would either deliver justice or set a killer free. In the defendant's chair, Marcus Thompson shifted uncomfortably, unaware that his fate now rested in the hands of a traumatized child and the therapy dog, who was about to help her find her voice after 8 months of protective silence. The moment everyone had been waiting for was about to begin. The courtroom held its breath as Prosecutor Jennifer Liu approached the witness stand where Emma Rodriguez sat like a porcelain doll, her tiny frame dwarfed by the imposing chair that had been lowered to accommodate her height. Rex lay motionless beside her, his golden fur catching the morning light streaming through the tall courthouse windows. Emma's fingers remained buried in the therapy dog's coat, her anchor in a sea of adult faces and formal proceedings that threatened to overwhelm her fragile composure. "Good morning, Emma," Lou said softly, kneeling to the child's eye level. Her voice carried the gentle tone she used with her own daughters, careful not to startle the girl who had been silent for 8 months. "Can you tell me your name?" "Lee." Question hung in the air like a prayer. Dr. Chun leaned forward from her observer's chair, ready to intervene if Emma showed signs of distress. Grandmother Maria clutched her rosary beads so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. Emma's dark eyes darted around the courtroom, taking in the jury box where 12 strangers watched her with expressions ranging from sympathy to curiosity. She noticed the court reporter, whose fingers danced across mysterious keys, the bailiff, standing guard near the judge's bench, and the gallery filled with people she'd never seen before. The overwhelming attention made her shrink deeper into her chair, seeking protection in Rex's warm presence. "It's okay, sweetheart," Lou continued, her patience infinite. "We're all here to listen to you. Take your time." Minutes stretched into eternity as Emma remained silent, her small chest rising and falling with rapid, shallow breaths. Judge Williams watched the clock, knowing that every passing second weakened their case. Defense Attorney Walsh sat smugly at her table, already mentally composing her motion for dismissal, based on the prosecution's star witness being unable to testify. Rex sensed Emma's distress with the intuitive awareness that made him extraordinary among therapy animals. The golden retriever slowly shifted his position, moving closer to Emma's chair without breaking his calm demeanor. His warm brown eyes met hers with an expression of infinite understanding and patience. Emma's breathing began to slow as she focused on Rex's steady presence, her fingers tracing patterns in his silky fur. Marcus Thompson shifted uncomfortably in the defendant's chair, sweat beading on his forehead despite the courtroom's air conditioning. Something about Emma's intense gaze made him nervous, though he told himself that a 3-year-old couldn't possibly remember enough detail to hurt his case. He'd been careful that night. Warm gloves covered his face. There was no way this silent child could identify him with certainty. "Emma," Lou tried again, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can you tell us about your daddy?" The mention of Carlos Rodriguez caused Emma's eyes to fill with tears, but she remained silent. Lou felt her heart breaking for the traumatized child, knowing that forcing testimony from someone so young went against every maternal instinct she possessed. But Carlos Rodriguez deserved justice, and Marcus Thompson deserved consequences for the violence he'd brought into an innocent family's home. The breakthrough began with the smallest possible gesture. Emma's free hand, the one not buried in Rex's fur, slowly rose from her lap. Her tiny index finger extended, pointing directly at Rex with the deliberate precision of a child making an important announcement. The courtroom's collective attention followed her gaze to the golden retriever, who remained perfectly still under the scrutiny of dozens of observers. Judge Williams leaned forward slightly, sensing that something significant was about to happen. The court reporter's fingers hovered over her stenography machine, ready to capture whatever words might come. Juror Patricia Davis later described the moment as electric, saying that everyone in the room seemed to understand they were witnessing something unprecedented. Emma's lips parted, and the first word she'd spoken in 8 months emerged as barely a whisper. "Daddies." The word hung in the air like a fragile butterfly, precious and impossible to recapture if lost. Dr. Chun felt tears spring to her eyes as she witnessed the breakthrough she'd hoped for during countless therapy sessions. Emma's voice, though small and tremulous, carried the clear articulation of a bright child who understood exactly what she was saying. The second word came stronger, more confident. Dog. Together, the two words created a simple phrase that hit the courtroom like a thunderbolt. Daddy's dog. Emma kept pointing at Rex, her expression showing recognition and memory flooding back. Grandmother Maria gasped aloud, her hand flying to cover her mouth as she realized the implications of Emma's words. But Emma wasn't finished. The floodgates of memory had opened, and words that had been trapped for 8 months began pouring out in a torrent of 3-year-old truth. She turned her gaze from Rex to scan the courtroom, her eyes searching until they found Marcus Thompson, sitting at the defense table. Her small face hardened with an expression far too serious for someone her age. "Bad man hurt Daddy's dog too," Emma declared, her voice growing stronger with each word. The phrase landed like a bomb in the silent courtroom. Prosecutor Lou felt her knees go weak as she realized the enormous significance of Emma's revelation. No one, not the police, not the family, not even Grandmother Maria, had mentioned a dog in any of their statements. The investigation had found no evidence of a pet at the Rodriguez home. Defense Attorney Walsh shot to her feet so quickly that her chair toppled backward. "Objection. Your Honor, this is clearly leading the witness. There's no evidence of any dog in this case." Her voice carried a note of panic that surprised even herself. The mention of an unknown animal victim threatened to demolish her carefully constructed defense strategy. Overruled, Judge Williams replied firmly, her own heart racing as she grasped the implications. The child is testifying about her own observations. Continue, Ms. Liu. Emma's eyes remained fixed on Thompson, and her next words sent shockwaves through everyone present. He took Bruno away in the big truck. Bruno was bleeding, but still trying to protect Daddy. Her small voice carried absolute certainty. The clarity of a child recounting a memory seared into her consciousness. Bruno bit the bad man's hand when he hurt Daddy, and the bad man hurt Bruno back. The courtroom erupted in murmurs as reporters scribbled frantically, and jury members exchanged significant glances. Thompson's face had gone completely pale, beads of sweat now openly visible on his forehead. He grabbed his attorney's arm, whispering urgently, "She's making this up?" There was no dog mentioned in any police reports. But Detective Martinez, watching from the gallery, felt pieces of a puzzle clicking into place in her mind. Emma's testimony explained inconsistencies in the crime scene that had bothered her. For months, the lack of defensive wounds on Carlos, despite clear signs of a struggle, bloodstains near the back door that didn't match spatter patterns from the murder, and neighbor. Reports of a dog barking frantically around midnight that night. Rex remained perfectly calm throughout the revelation, his training keeping him focused on his primary mission of providing comfort to Emma. The golden retriever seemed to understand that his presence had unlocked something crucial, that his resemblance to the family's lost protector had given Emma the courage to speak the words that had been trapped inside her traumatized mind. Emma continued petting Rex as she spoke, her voice gaining confidence with each sentence. Bruno loved Daddy. Bruno loved me. Bad man made Bruno go away forever, just like Daddy. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but her words remained clear and precise. Rex looks like Bruno. Rex is a good dog. Bruno was a good dog, too. Prosecutor Liu realized she was witnessing more than just testimony. She was seeing justice itself, being born from the ashes of trauma. Emma's words about an unknown dog victim had just provided the missing link that could transform their circumstantial case into an ironclad conviction. More importantly, the brave little girl who had lost her voice to violence had found it again, through the healing power of a therapy dog's unconditional love. Emma, Liu said gently, can you tell us anything else about that night? But Emma had said enough. She buried her face in Rex's fur, emotionally exhausted from her breakthrough, but visibly relieved to have finally shared the terrible secret she'd carried alone for 8 months. The courtroom sat in stunned silence, everyone understanding they'd just witnessed something extraordinary. Emma Rodriguez had not only found her voice, she'd potentially solved her father's murder case with 2 simple words that revealed a victim no one knew existed. The investigation was about to explode in directions nobody had anticipated, and Marcus Thompson's confident smirk had been replaced by the pale complexion of a man watching his lies unravel in real time. Justice was about to get a 4-legged twist that would change everything. Within minutes of Emma's bombshell testimony, Judge Patricia Williams called an emergency recess as the courtroom erupted into controlled chaos. Detective Sarah Martinez was already on her phone in the hallway, barking orders to her team while reporters shouted questions behind courthouse security barriers. I need every animal control record in Phoenix, cross-referenced with German shepherds found dead or injured between October 15th and 20th. Now, her hands shook as she dialed the crime scene unit. 8 months of investigation had just been blown wide open by a 3-year-old's revelation about a dog no one knew existed. Back in the courtroom, Emma remained curled against Rex's warm side, emotionally drained from her breakthrough, but visibly relieved. Dr. Chun monitored her carefully, watching for signs of regression or trauma from reliving that horrible night. "She's okay," the psychologist whispered to Prosecutor Liu. "Actually, she seems lighter somehow, like a weight has been lifted." Speaking about Bruno might have been exactly what she needed. District Attorney Robert Hayes paced the prosecutor's conference room like a man possessed, his usually immaculate suit wrinkled from stress. "How did we miss a dog?" he demanded, slamming case files onto the polished table. 8 months of investigation, hundreds of man-hours, and a 3-year-old just revealed evidence we never knew existed? Prosecutor Liu spread crime scene photos across the table, studying them with fresh eyes now that Emma's testimony had provided new context. "Look at this blood spatter near the back door," Liu pointed with trembling fingers. "We always assumed it was Carlos's blood from the struggle, but what if it belonged to the dog? And here these scratch marks on the doorframe. We thought they were from the break-in, but they could be from a desperate animal trying to get inside to protect his family." Detective Martinez burst through the conference room door, her phone still pressed to her ear as she juggled multiple urgent calls. "Bingo," she announced, her voice electric with discovery. Animal Control found a dead German Shepherd in South Mountain Park on October 17th, 2 days after the murder. Collar still intact with tags reading Bruno Rodriguez and Carlos's phone number. How the hell did we miss this? The revelation sent shockwaves through the prosecution team. Hayes grabbed the phone, demanding immediate forensic analysis of Bruno's remains. Within hours, the Arizona Department of Public Safety's crime lab was processing evidence that should have been discovered months earlier. Dr. Michael Torres, the state's chief forensic veterinarian, worked with unprecedented urgency to examine Bruno's preserved remains. Multiple stab wounds to the torso, defensive bite marks on the muzzle, and significant blunt force trauma, Dr. Torres reported during an emergency conference call. This animal fought viciously to protect someone. More importantly, we found human skin cells under his claws and human blood on his teeth that doesn't match the victim, Carlos Rodriguez. The DNA analysis took 18 hours of round-the-clock work at the state lab. When the results came back, they hit like lightning striking the courthouse steps. The blood under Bruno's claws contained genetic markers that matched Marcus Thompson. With 99.7% certainty, the violent predator who'd claimed he was nowhere near the Rodriguez home that night had been bitten and scratched by a German Shepherd fighting for his family's lives. Emma's additional testimony, delivered in whispered fragments while stroking Rex's fur, painted a picture that perfectly matched the forensic evidence now pouring in. "Bruno tried to bite the bad man's hand," she told Dr. Chun during a gentle follow-up session. The bad man yelled really loud. Bruno was bleeding, but still trying to protect Daddy. Then the bad man put Bruno in his big truck and drove away. Security camera footage that had been dismissed as irrelevant suddenly became crucial evidence. Mesa Animal Hospital's parking lot surveillance showed Thompson's distinctive blue pickup truck arriving at 2:17 a.m. on October 16th, less than 3 hours after the estimated time of death. Dr. Lisa Park, the night emergency veterinarian, was called back for urgent questioning about the nervous man who'd brought in a severely injured German Shepherd. "I remember him clearly now," Dr. Park testified during a hastily arranged deposition. "He was agitated, kept looking over his shoulder, and claimed he'd found the dog hit by a car on the highway. But the wounds were all wrong for vehicle trauma. They were clean cuts, defensive injuries, bite patterns on the muzzle. I recommended calling Animal Control to check for missing pet reports, but he insisted on taking the dog back with him after." Emergency treatment. The veterinary records revealed Thompson's elaborate lie. He'd paid $300 in cash for emergency surgery to save Bruno's life, giving a false name and address. Security footage showed him leaving with the injured German Shepherd at 4:45 a.m., just as dawn was breaking over the Phoenix desert. What happened to Bruno during the next 12 hours remained a mystery until animal control officers led police to the remote location where his body had been discovered. He kept Bruno alive for hours after the murder, Detective Martinez realized with growing horror. Thompson probably thought the dog might be valuable, might know where Carlos kept money or drugs. When Bruno couldn't lead him to any treasure, Thompson abandoned him in the desert to die slowly from his injuries. The psychological profile of Marcus Thompson shifted dramatically as new evidence emerged. Dr. Rebecca Santos, a criminal psychologist consulting on the case, reviewed Thompson's expanded record with growing alarm. This wasn't a simple robbery gone wrong, she explained to the prosecution team. Thompson's pattern shows escalating violence against both humans and animals. He's killed before, we just haven't connected the dots yet. Emma's breakthrough had triggered a statewide investigation into Thompson's activities. Cold case detectives in Tucson discovered similarities to an unsolved murder from 2 years earlier. Another single father found stabbed in his home. Another missing dog that was never found. The pattern suggested Thompson had been targeting families with protective animals, viewing the pets as obstacles to be eliminated rather than innocent victims. Defense attorney Margaret Walsh found herself scrambling to contain the damage as her client's alibi crumbled completely. Thompson's girlfriend, Melissa Chun, cracked under renewed police pressure, admitting that Marcus had returned home that night with scratches on his hands and arms that he'd claimed came from helping a friend move furniture. She also revealed that Thompson had insisted they get rid of their own dog shortly after October 15th, claiming he was allergic to animals, despite living with pets for years. He burned his clothes the next morning, Melissa sobbed during her police interview. Said he'd spilled motor oil at work, but the clothes smelled like bleach, not oil. And he kept washing his hands obsessively, scrubbing at scratches that weren't healing properly. Her testimony would become another nail in Thompson's coffin, corroborating Emma's account of Bruno fighting his attacker. Back in the courtroom, Emma continued providing crucial details with Rex's calming presence beside her. She described Thompson's truck, big and blue like the sky but dirty, and his voice, scary and mean, not like Daddy's friends. Most importantly, she provided a timeline that matched the physical evidence perfectly. Bruno had confronted Thompson in the living room, fought to protect Carlos, and stabbed but continued fighting, and finally been carried away while still alive. Bruno was the goodest dog, Emma whispered to the packed courtroom, her small voice carrying absolute conviction. He tried so hard to save Daddy. The bad man was mean to both of them. Tears streamed down her face, but her words came clear and strong. 8 months of suppressed trauma finally finding expression through the healing power of Vez, Rex's unconditional support. The golden retriever remained motionless throughout Emma's testimony, his professional training keeping him focused on his primary mission despite the chaos surrounding them. Rex had helped dozens of victims find their voices, but never had the stakes been this high or the revelation this dramatic. His gentle presence had unlocked not just Emma's voice, but an entirely new dimension of evidence that would transform the prosecution's case. As court adjourned for the day, Marcus Thompson was led back to his cell with the knowledge that his world had just collapsed. Emma Rodriguez, the silent child he dismissed as harmless, had spoken 2 words that exposed lies he thought were buried forever. Bruno's story was about to emerge from the desert shadows, carrying with it the DNA evidence and witness testimony that would ensure justice for both father and faithful dog. The investigation that had seemed hopeless just hours earlier was now racing toward an inevitable conclusion, powered by the courage of a traumatized child and the healing presence of a golden retriever, who'd helped her remember that some protectors never give up, even when facing impossible odds. The jury deliberation room buzzed with intense conversation, as 12 citizens grappled with evidence that had transformed completely over 3 days of testimony. Foreman Patricia Davis spread crime scene photos across the polished conference table, comparing them with veterinary records, DNA analysis, and security footage that painted an undeniable picture of Marcus Thompson's guilt. "That little girl's testimony changed everything," she said, her voice heavy with emotion. When she pointed at that therapy dog and said, "Daddy's dog," she wasn't just speaking, she was solving her father's murder. Juror Michael Santos, a father of 3, held up Dr. Torres's forensic report on Bruno's remains. "Look at these bite patterns. The dog fought like hell to protect his family. Thompson's DNA under the claws, his blood on the teeth. This isn't circumstantial anymore. This is scientific proof." The evidence had overwhelmed even the most skeptical jury members. What began as a weak case built on a stolen watch had become an avalanche of physical proof that buried the defense's arguments completely. In the courthouse hallway, Emma Rodriguez sat in the victim advocate's office, coloring peacefully while Rex dozed beside her chair. She'd spent the past 3 days returning to court, providing additional details that corroborated every piece of evidence Detective Martinez's team had uncovered. Emma's descriptions of Thompson's truck, his voice, even the way he walked, matched witness statements and security footage with startling accuracy. Her memory, protected by trauma-induced silence for 8 months, had emerged crystal clear when Rex's presence made her feel safe enough to speak. "She's remarkable," Dr. Chun told Grandmother Maria as they watched Emma carefully color inside the lines of a butterfly drawing. "Her recall is extraordinary for a child her age. Trauma sometimes preserves memories with photographic clarity, and Rex's presence has allowed her to access those memories without being overwhelmed by fear." Maria nodded, tears of pride streaming down her weathered cheeks as she watched her granddaughter's transformation. 3 floors below in the holding cells, Marcus Thompson sat on his narrow cot, finally understanding that his elaborate web of lies had completely unraveled. His court-appointed attorney, Margaret Walsh, had delivered the devastating news during their final consultation. "The DNA evidence is overwhelming, Marcus. Bruno's claws, the veterinary records, your girlfriend's testimony about the scratches. There's no reasonable explanation except your guilt." Thompson's mind raced through the events of that terrible night, remembering details he'd tried to suppress. He'd targeted the Rodriguez home based on information from a fellow drug dealer who'd sworn that Carlos was holding a significant stash of narcotics. The intelligence had been completely wrong, a case of mistaken identity that had led Thompson to murder an innocent man and his loyal dog. When Bruno had attacked, fighting with desperate courage to protect his family, Thompson had acted on pure instinct and rage. "I never meant for the dog to suffer," Thompson finally admitted to Walsh, his voice broken with something approaching remorse. "After I stabbed him, he was still alive, still trying to crawl back to the house to protect that little girl. I couldn't just leave him there to die slowly, so I took him to the vet. I thought maybe." His voice trailed off as he realized how pathetic his attempted justification sounded. Walsh shook her head grimly. "Saving Bruno's life for a few hours doesn't erase the fact that you murdered him and Carlos Rodriguez. The jury has heard that little girl's testimony, Marcus. They've seen the evidence. You're going to prison for life, and honestly, you deserve every day of it." The jury's deliberation lasted exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes, longer than many had expected given the overwhelming evidence. But the jurors wanted to review every detail carefully before delivering a verdict that would determine Thompson's fate. They examined Emma's testimony word by word, compared it with the DNA analysis, and traced Thompson's movements through security footage and cell phone records that placed him at the Rodriguez home at exactly the time Emma described. "This is about more than just convicting a killer," Juror Davis explained to her fellow citizens. That brave little girl trusted us with her story. She found the courage to speak after 8 months of silence because she believed we would listen and act. We can't let her down, and we can't let Carlos Rodriguez and Bruno's deaths be meaningless. When Judge Williams reconvened court at 3:30 p.m., a packed gallery held its collective breath. Emma sat in the front row with her grandmother, Rex lying calmly at her feet as she clutched Mr. Peanuts and watched the proceedings with intelligent eyes. The therapy dog had become her constant companion over the past week, providing security that allowed her to face the intimidating formal atmosphere without retreating into protective silence. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" Judge Williams asked, her voice carrying across the hushed courtroom. Foreman Davis stood slowly, holding the paper that would determine Marcus Thompson's fate. The defendant sat rigid in his chair, his face ashen as he prepared to hear words that would either free him or condemn him to life behind bars. "We have, Your Honor." Davis's voice was steady and clear. "On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Carlos Rodriguez, we find the defendant Marcus Allen Thompson guilty." The words hit the courtroom like a physical force. Emma looked up at her grandmother with questioning eyes, not fully understanding the legal terminology, but sensing the emotion in the adult faces around her. "On the charge of aggravated animal cruelty resulting in death," Davis continued, "we find the defendant guilty." This charge had been added after Emma's testimony revealed Bruno's murder, making Thompson one of the first defendants in Arizona. History to face serious felony charges for killing a family pet during the commission of another crime. Grandmother Maria collapsed into sobs of relief, 8 months of anguish and uncertainty finally lifting from her shoulders. Emma reached up to pat her grandmother's arm with the instinctive compassion that made her special, and looked down at Rex with a small smile. "Good dog helped me tell the truth about Bruno and Daddy," she whispered, her words audible only to those sitting nearby. The sentencing phase brought emotional testimony from Carlos's coworkers, neighbors, and friends who painted a picture of a devoted father taken far too soon. Emma, with Rex beside her, testified briefly about missing her daddy's bedtime stories and Bruno's morning walks. Her simple words, "Daddy and Bruno are together now, but I miss them every day," left jurors wiping tears from their eyes. Marcus Thompson received 2 consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole. Judge Williams, delivering the harshest penalty available under Arizona law, looked directly at the convicted killer as she spoke. "Mr. Thompson, your actions destroyed not just 2 lives, but shattered the innocence of a child who trusted that her home was safe. Carlos Rodriguez died protecting his daughter, and Bruno died protecting them both. Their courage in the face of your violence deserves recognition, and their memory deserves justice." Emma's response to the verdict surprised everyone present. Instead of celebration or relief, she stood up from her seat and walked directly to where Thompson sat in shackles. Rex followed protectively, staying close to her side as she approached the man who had destroyed her family. The courtroom fell. Silent, everyone wondering what the remarkable child might say to her father's killer. Looking up at Thompson with eyes far older than her years, Emma spoke with quiet dignity. "Daddy forgives you, but you can't hurt any more daddies or doggies." Her words carried the wisdom of someone who had stared into darkness and chosen light instead of hatred. Thompson broke down completely, his sobs echoing through the silent courtroom as he finally comprehended the full magnitude of what he had destroyed. Officer Sullivan watched the scene with tears in his eyes, understanding that Rex had accomplished something extraordinary. The golden retriever had not just helped a traumatized child find her voice, he'd helped her find healing, courage, and the strength to face her family's killer with forgiveness instead of fear. Emma Rodriguez had transformed from a silent victim into a powerful symbol of resilience and hope. As court officers led Thompson away to begin his life sentence, Emma returned to Rex's side and buried her face in his golden fur. "Thank you for helping me be brave like Bruno," she whispered. The therapy dog's tail wagged gently, as if he understood that their work together had delivered justice for both the living and the dead. Justice had been served, but Emma's story was far from over. Her courage in speaking those two simple words, "Daddy's dog," had not only convicted her father's killer, but established legal precedent that would help countless other young victims find their voices. The little girl who had lost everything in one terrible night had discovered that sometimes the smallest acts of bravery can change the world. The verdict represented more than just punishment for Marcus Thompson. It was validation that Emma's truth mattered, that Bruno's sacrifice was recognized, and that the justice system could adapt to protect its most vulnerable witnesses. As the courtroom emptied and reporters rushed to file their stories, Emma Rodriguez walked hand in hand with her grandmother toward a future finally free from the shadows of that horrible night. 18 months after Marcus Thompson's conviction, Emma Rodriguez raced through the Phoenix Police Department's K-9 training facility with the boundless energy of a healthy 5-year-old, her laughter echoing off concrete walls that had witnessed countless training sessions. Rex bounded beside her, no longer the formal therapy dog in an official vest, but Emma's unofficial godfather and dearest friend. Their weekly visits had become legendary around the department, brightening even the most hardened officers' days as they watched the miraculous transformation of the little girl who had once been trapped in silence. "Rex, look what I drew for you," Emma called out, her voice bright and musical, as she waved a crayon masterpiece depicting two golden dogs playing in a field dotted with rainbow flowers. Officer Jake Sullivan smiled as he watched their reunion, still amazed by the healing power their partnership had unleashed. Emma's recovery had exceeded every expert's expectations. Her selective mutism completely resolved through the therapeutic bond she'd formed with Rex during those crucial courtroom days. The Rodriguez family home had been transformed as dramatically. As its youngest resident, Grandmother Maria had converted Carlos's old workshop into a bright playroom where Emma spent hours with Hope, the golden retriever puppy they'd adopted from the same rescue organization that had trained Rex. Hope was Bruno's spiritual successor, a 4-legged guardian angel who followed Emma everywhere, sleeping beside her bed and accompanying her too. The playground where she now played fearlessly with neighborhood children. "She talks constantly now," Maria laughed during her monthly check-in with Dr. Amanda Chun. "Sometimes I miss the quiet, but then I remember those 8 months of silence, and I thank God every day for giving her voice back. She tells me stories about school, about Hope's adventures, about visiting Rex. She even talks to her father's picture every night, telling him about her day as if he can hear every word." Dr. Chun had documented Emma's recovery in what would become groundbreaking research on animal-assisted therapy for traumatized children. Her peer-reviewed study, published in the Journal of Child Psychology, featured Emma's case as the centerpiece of revolutionary findings about the healing power of therapy animals. Traditional talk therapy failed completely with Emma, Dr. Chun explained during a keynote speech at the National Conference on Child Trauma. But one therapy dog accomplished in minutes what months of conventional treatment couldn't achieve. Rex didn't just help Emma speak. He helped her remember that trust was possible again. The legal implications of Emma's case had rippled across the American justice system like stones thrown into still water. Arizona had passed the Emma Rodriguez Act, mandating that therapy dogs be available for child witnesses in serious felony cases. 12 other states had followed suit, creating a network of specially trained animals dedicated to helping young victims find their voices. Rex had become the gold standard for victim assistance dogs, his techniques studied and replicated in training programs from California to New York. "We get calls every week from police departments wanting to start their own programs," Sullivan explained to a visiting delegation from Texas. Emma's courage in that courtroom showed the whole country that children can testify effectively when they feel safe and supported. Rex proved that therapy dogs aren't just feel-good additions to investigations. They're legitimate tools for uncovering truth and delivering justice. The media attention surrounding Emma's case had faded into more positive coverage focusing on her remarkable recovery and the expansion of therapy dog programs. Channel 12 News ran an anniversary special featuring Emma's first television interview, conducted with Rex lying beside her in grandmother Maria's living room. Rex helped me be brave when I was scared, Emma explained to reporter Susan Martinez, her words clear and confident. He showed me that some strangers are good strangers who want the help. Bruno would like Rex because they're both protector dogs. Marcus Thompson's appeals had been systematically denied by every level of Arizona's court system. The DNA evidence, security footage, and Emma's testimony had created an unshakable foundation for his conviction. Prison officials reported that Thompson had become a model inmate, participating in therapy programs and expressing genuine remorse for his crimes. His letters to Emma, which were screened by authorities and never delivered per Maria's request, contained repeated apologies and admissions of guilt that further validated the jury's verdict. Thompson's transformation in prison suggests that Emma's forgiveness in that courtroom might have been the catalyst for his genuine rehabilitation, noted criminal psychologist Dr. Rebecca Santos. Her courage in facing him without hatred, combined with the overwhelming evidence of his guilt, forced him to confront the reality of what he'd done. Sometimes justice includes the possibility of redemption, even for those who commit terrible crimes. The Phoenix community had rallied around Emma's story in ways that restored faith in human compassion. Local businesses sponsored her education fund, ensuring she could attend college without financial burden. The mechanic shop where Carlos had worked established an annual scholarship in his memory for children who'd lost parents to violent crime. Most importantly, Emma had become a symbol of resilience that inspired other young trauma victims across the country. We get letters from families everywhere, Maria explained, showing stacks of correspondence from parents whose children had been helped by Emma's example. Kids who wouldn't speak after car accidents, house fires, or witnessing violence. Their parents write to say that hearing about Emma and Rex gave them hope. Some children specifically ask for golden retriever therapy dogs because they want to be brave like Emma. The legal precedent established by Emma's case had been cited in over 200 subsequent trials involving child witnesses. The Rodriguez standard required courts to provide therapeutic accommodations for traumatized young victims, recognizing that traditional courtroom procedures often re-traumatized the very people seeking justice. Law schools now taught Emma's case as an example of how the justice system could evolve to protect vulnerable populations without compromising legal integrity. Emma's 5th birthday party, held in the police department's community room, drew an unlikely crowd of detectives, prosecutors, therapy dog handlers, and child advocates who had become extended family through their shared experience. Rex wore a special birthday hat that Emma had decorated with gold stars, and his tail never stopped wagging as dozens of people celebrated the remarkable child whose courage had changed their lives. "Make a wish, Mia," Maria whispered as Emma leaned over her princess-themed birthday cake. The little girl closed her eyes tightly, her hands pressed together in concentration. When she opened them, her face glowed with the pure joy of a child who had rediscovered hope after losing everything. "I wished for all the scared kids to have dogs like Rex, to help them be brave," Emma announced, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had faced her worst fears and emerged victorious. "And I wished for Daddy and Bruno to know that the bad man can't hurt anyone else now." Her words prompted tears and applause from the assembled crowd, each person understanding they were witnessing something sacred, the complete healing of a trauma survivor who had found her voice again. Officer Sullivan knelt beside Emma as she fed Rex pieces of birthday cake. "You know, Emma, Rex has a question for you." Emma's eyes widened with curiosity as Sullivan continued. "He wants to know if you'd like to help him visit other scared children who need to find their voices too. You could be his special helper, showing them that speaking up is brave and that good dogs like Rex are always there to help." Emma's face lit up with purpose and excitement. "Yes, I want to help other kids be brave, like Bruno taught me." Her enthusiastic response marked the beginning of a new chapter in both their lives. Emma Rodriguez, the silent victim who had become a powerful voice for justice, was ready to help other traumatized children find their own courage. As the celebration continued around them, Rex and Emma sat together in comfortable companionship, their bond representing hope, healing, and the incredible power of love to overcome even the darkest trauma. Emma's journey from silence to strength had not only delivered justice for her father and Bruno, it had created a legacy that would protect and empower countless other children for generations to come. The little girl who had lost her voice to violence had found it again through the gentle presence of a golden retriever, proving that sometimes the most powerful changes in the world begin with the smallest acts of courage and the unconditional love of a therapy dog who believed that every child deserves to be heard.